Kumla, the Black Gemara, we're up to Daf Nun Tes Amud Aleph. We're middle explaining the argument of Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yasi, whether according to Rabbi Akiva, you started doing the spraying on the Mizbeach Hazav from the southern corner, southern eastern side, and then you work your way around the left. And we explain, and according to Rabbi Yasi, you start from the northern eastern side, because they argue there was one curtain or two curtains. How did you come out from the Kodesh Kodashim into the Heichel? And then we gave a number of explanations as to what the argument is if you're going, because according to Rabbi Yasi, you're going from to the right. According to Rabbi Akiva, seems you're going to the left. So we explained either Rabbi Akiva had no choice because you had to go back to the point that you encountered first, or then we started explaining that they're arguing whether you actually walk around the Mizbeach or you just move your hand around. And the last thing we learned was the argument is, how do we treat the Mizbeach Hazav? Is it only like one corner of the outer Mizbeach because it's the same dimensions, an Amma and Amma, or do we say that it's all commensurate, and therefore the Mizbeach Hazav, even though it's an Amma by Amma, is equal to the outer Mizbeach, which is 32 Ammas, and therefore you have to follow the same procedure, which is right to left. So now we're going to bring a Braisa, which supports this last way of explaining the Machlekes, and this is about 15 lines on top of the page. First line is Koi. Tanya Amar Rabbi Shmuel said, Shnei Kohenim Doilim Nishtayde B'Mikdash. There were two Kohenim Doilim that were left in the base from the first base of Mikdash, and they said the following, or the second base of Mikdash. Rishon ze oime says in Mikdash Rishon, others say Mikdash Sheni. Ze oime biyodi hikafti, ze oime beragli hikafti. One of them said, I walked around the Mizbeach Pnimi with my feet, and the other one said, no, I walked with my hands. So we see that this is actually a machlekes. Each one gave a reason. So it seems interesting that each Kohen Gadol did whatever they felt was right. It wasn't a universal law that all Kohen Gadol had to follow a certain protocol. This Kohen Gadol gave a reason because Saviv the Mizbeach Pnimi is Saviv the Mizbeach Chitzon. That's the same. It's all commensurate, and therefore you follow the procedure of Mizbeach Pnimi just like you did in Mizbeach Chitzon. And with Zen Leisen Talmud Varav Kulan Mizbeach Pnimi b'Mokum Chada Keren the Chitzon. The entire Mizbeach Pnimi has the same dimensions as a horn of the outer Mizbeach, and therefore you don't have to walk around it. So just interesting. If you want to talk about it, that seems every Kohen Gadol did whatever he thought was right up here halacha. Didn't have to follow any particular bezdin or any particular rules. They just did whatever they wanted. Okay, we're up to
Then raised an interesting question. Other metzias, as it were, that you have arguments about in the Beis Hamikdash, it could be there were other things that were one sometimes I did like this, sometimes I did like that.
Yeah, it could very well be. Could very well be. Especially if it was the first Beis Hamikdash, we wouldn't even know about it. If it's the second Beis Hamikdash, the Tanai would have known. Rabbi Lezer says the in our Mishnah. Rabbi Lezer also argues, and he argues that a Tanakama says he walked around the Mizbeach, a Pnimit in Mizbeach, and Rabbi Lezer says that no. Rabbi Lezer says that you stood on the ground and you just moved your hand about. Says the Gemara Masnisi Mani. Who is the author of our Mishnah? Who's the author of our Mishnah? Rabbi Yehudi. This follows the view of Rabbi Yehuda, the way he understood Rabbi Lezer. What's the story? Tanya Rameir says that, you know what Rabbi Lezer says? The question now is, okay, we all know what Rabbi Lezer says, he stood in one place. Remember, we made a distinction whether you had your finger facing upwards. The problem with that is that the blood then flows down your hand, or you had your finger facing downwards. And is there a difference between any particular corner, one and the next? So in our Mishnah, it says that all of them, all three corners, except the one that you're standing opposite, all three corners he did from the bottom going up, because it didn't matter really, because your hand was in the right height. It's except the one in front of you, you had to dab it the other way around, top going down, because if you did it from bottom going up, because since your hand eventually goes higher, it starts flowing backwards on your hand. That's what our Mishnah says. But in fact, the machlekes are made of Yehuda. Tanya, Rabbi says that, you know what Rabbi Lezer says? Rabbi Lezer, you're standing in your one place. According to Rabbi, and all of them, you started from the top, you worked your way down, which is easier. The only one that you didn't go, the only one that you actually went from the bottom up was the one that diagonally opposite you. That you go from the bottom up, you're going upwards. Good. That one there is easier just to do that way. Says the Gemara further. However, if you don't you're standing on your one place. The Alkula on all of them, who all of them, you start from the bottom and you work your way up. Chutz mizu, the only one that you work from the top working down is this one here. You go from top to bottom. Why? We don't want to sully your clothing. So our Mishnah follows up Yehuda's view. He's a mimenu. Then you spray after you did the corners. You went and sprayed al tihara shemazbeach. And the Gemara is going to know what is tihara shemazbeach. What exactly is tihara shemazbeach? Says the Gemara, my tihara. What is the definition of tihara? In which section of Mizbeach do you do it? First, the Gemara thought the Rabbi Shela Paul gave the Mizbeach right in the middle of Mizbeach. Kedamri inchi. People say tahar tihara the havi palga the yema when you use the expression. And they say that Torah Tira, they say, oh, it's so bright outside. And what is it? That's noontime. So we see that it's right in the middle. So they thought in the middle of the wall. Makes that's a question. It says, not on ashes, on the coal. You shove away in the coal from both sides and the top of Maza. Then you spray. Clearly, we're spraying on top of the Mizbeach, not on the wall. Al Giluya the Mizbeach. It means on top of the Mizbeach, the exposed part. You can see what it says. Hashamayim l'toyer. As it says, it's like this: the heaven itself, l'toyer, and it's so pure and bright. Tanya Chanan says, and Chananya says that you put it on the right side, and Rabbi Yasi says. Okay, Rabbi says, but you put it on the left side. This is going back to the machlekes we had when you start spraying on the corners. Which corner do you do? Rabbi says you do it on the what do you call it? On the south side, and Hanani says you do it on the north side. Rabbi says you do it on the south side. The Mike Mifki, what's the machlekes? We're talking now about the 7 sprays that you did. That and the question will be again, where's the opening of the parachas? If the opening was only one parachas, then the opening, if there were 2, then the opening is on the south side, and therefore that's how you came out on the southwest corner. And we learned before, you don't do it on the first corner. You go to, it says the Yotzim Mizbeach. So you go to the next one, which is the southeast corner, and then you go back to the southwest. Because the Shlaki said, "Ein mavidin ala mitzvahs," and then from there you move the other way. You do northwest and so on. And the Gemara explains. So Tanya Khan said, "But that's fine. You know, it's also it's on the south side." The Mike Mifki Master of Pischa Bedonakoi, Master of Pischa Betzavakoi, and another one holds that no, it's on the door is on the north side, and because the door is on the north side, therefore, so therefore that's what you do. In other words, they're arguing when you put it on top of the Mizbeach. You did it right after you finished doing your 7 sprays. You then went to the top of the Mizbeach. So the question is, where did you end the 7 sprays in the parasha that you went on top of the Mizbeach? So Rabbi Yasi, everyone holds everyone holds wherever you completed the corners. That's where you placed it on the roof of the Mizbech. Okay, so according to Rabbi Yasi, you start from the north side, so you finished on the south side, and that's where you did your sprays on the Mizbech. All the sprays you did on the Mizbech was on the south side. So in other words, wherever you've completed your turning around the Mizbech, that's where now you did the 7. And the question is, my timer, why? Amakra, it says the pasuk v'tiharoi. Says the pasuk v'tiharoi that you should I guess spray on the mizbeach itself. V'kotchai, and you make it holy. Malkum shekotchai sham tira. Where should you place a sprinkle on top of the mizbeach? Those 7 times where you finished doing the kodesh, you finished sprinkling on the horns, on the corners. So therefore, according to Rabbi Yasi, you finished on the south side, so that's where you do it. According to Hananya, you finished on the north side because you started on the south side. Hananya holds it with 2 curtains, and therefore you went from the south side. Since you started on the south side, and then you go from the southeast to the southwest to the northwest to the northeast. You finish on the northeast, so that's the side where you sprayed on the Mizbech. According to Rabbi Yossi, you started from the northeast. And because of Yotzam Mizbech, so if you went around, you ended up in the southwest. And that's where you put on Mizbech, in the southeast. Says the Gemara further, and the leftover blood, what did they do with it? They poured it on the base itself. So they didn't put on any shoots or anything else. They just poured it on the base itself, and then from there it ran out to this Amma, to this creek over there, and this canal, and from there it went outside the base of Hamikdash. So Shiori Adama Yishefet Al Yised Marosh Be'achitzah. It says a pasuk, "Ves kol dam hapar," the rest of the blood of the par yishbach, you should pour out. And when you did that, that's where it hit first. We said in our Mishnah that the blood left over from what you sprayed on the inner mizbech, you put it on the western part of the base, but on the southwestern part, and all the leftover blood from the kabbanas you did on the outer mizbech, you did it on the southern part, the southwestern part. That's where they poured it on the base. Now, why? So I'm going to say, the outer mizbech needs to pour on the base, but on the southern base. That's what I learned. Yisoid hamizbeach, the yisoid of the mizbeach, ze yisoid remis. We learned that the yisoid of the mizbeach means the southern yisoid. You're telling me yisoid remis. You're telling me it says that it means the southern base. Maybe means the western base. Amrit, we say, Yilmad Yirase min hakevesh liyitzayase min hechel. We say that we learn out when you go down the ramp, where do you place the blood? And then when you go out of the base of Mikdash, where do you place the blood? Ma yitzayase min hechel. Just like what it says when you walked out of the hechel. The samuchloi, you should do it right next to where you are. Obviously, what's the closest place to the hechel? Is the western side, because that's what's facing the hechel. The western side of the base is facing the entrance to the base of Mikdash. So Afir dosim in Akevish, even though it doesn't tell you exactly where to pour it down, the Samachloi. When you go off the ramp, the closest side is the southern side. The southern side. Tanya Rabbi Shmuel says, Zeh v'zeh Yisrael Rabbi. So we have two opinions that disagree with our Mishnah. So our Mishnah holds, it depends if it's workings left over from the inner Mizbech, it goes on what's closest to it, which is the western side. And we'll do it out of Mizbech, close to it, is what's on the southern side. However, in the Brais, we learned that there's no difference whether it's activities leftovers from the Mizbech HaPnimi or Ben Chitz, and they all go on the same side, but which is what? And here itself, we have a machlekes. Shmuel says, whether it's leftover blood from the inner Mizbech, and whether leftover without it, since we don't have a pasuk telling you what to do without Mizbech blood, we compare the two, and both of them are Yisrael Maravi on the western side. Rab Shimon Yochai says, Zeh v'zeh Yisrael Remi. Rab Shimon Yochai says they are both on the southern side. Both are the same place. Where are they on the southern side? Says the Gemara. We understand. He holds Yilmad Stein Mifaidish. It says clearly and possibly by the inner Mizbech. It says El Yisoid HaMizbech Hasha Pesach Oil Moed. Pesach Oil Moed means the entrance to Oil Moed, which is obviously the western side. And by the Kabbanis outside doesn't tell you where to put it. So obviously it means the same place. However, what possible svara could Rabbi have that not only the outer kabbanas go on the southern side, but he also holds that the inner kabbanas on the southern side. Why is that? Because somebody holds pischa bedorim koi. He holds. We're not talking now about the curtain between the kodesh hakadoshim and the hechel. He's talking about the entrance to the hechel. There are different opinions where the mizbeach was positioned. Whether the mizbeach was totally on the south side, whether the mizbeach was in the middle. He holds the mizbeach was totally on the north side. So when you went out of the hechel, you actually were facing the southern side. The western side of the mizbeach was not facing the entrance to the hechel at all. The entire mizbeach was on the northern side. And so when you opened the door of the hechel, what did you see? You only saw the southern side of or the southern side was what's Pesach El Moed. That's why he says the inner mizbeach he put on the southern side, so to the outer mizbeach. Tana Devei Rabbi Shmuel, the yeshiva of Rabbi Shmuel, learned B'Dvei Rabbi Shimon Yochai in the yeshiva of Rabbi Shimon Yochai that Zeh v'zeh Yisrael Remis, that they decided to change Rabbi Shmuel's opinion or to agree to Rabbi Shimon Yochai that everything was done on the southern side. The Simonach, in order for you to remember that, Mashchua Gavri le Gavra, the multitude of people were able to attract a single person. The way Rashi learns over here is the yeshiva of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, which had a number of people, were able to drag Rabbi Yishmael himself, who was only a gavra, a single person, to join them. Taisus has different issues with it because Rashi somewhere else learns exactly the opposite. So therefore, he learns as follows: that Gavra means nothing to do with the yeshiva. Rab Shimon ben Yochai's name has two names: Rab Shimon Bar Yochai. So that's Gavri, two people. Were able to persuade Gavra, a single person, Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel is always called Rabbi Shmuel. Sometimes you call Rabbi Shmuel ben Yossi, whichever Rabbi Shmuel it is. But generally, just Stam Rabbi Shmuel. So Gavri were able to pull Gavra. Or, says, everyone knows that the Rabbi Shmuel passed away before Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, and then the entire yeshiva moved over to Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai's yeshiva. So therefore, because it all moved over to Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai yeshiva, so that when you say Gavri, it means all the students were able to pull Gavra, because he was alone. Rabbi Shmuel didn't have any yeshiva left. Okay, let's continue the Gemara. Then it says in Mishnah, so what happens to the blood? The blood then runs down off the side, off the base, and it runs in the chutzner. It gets eventually to the Amma, to this creek over there, this little canal, and then it flows out and washes away, and it goes to Nachal Kidron, and people have to pay money for it. Otherwise, they're stealing from the base of Mikdash. Says the Gemara, we learned, it holds that the blood is also, if you use the carbon before you shechted it, or before you spray the blood, you take the meat, you steal from the base of Mikdash. So too, the same thing applies to blood. That's the words of opinion of Meir and Rav Shimon. Chacham say, "Ain't moilin behen." There's no meila when it comes to blood. Only when it comes to, I was going to see why. Only when it comes to the flesh. But now when it comes to blood, ad kan le pligi am rabban. They're only arguing whether it's mila rabbanim. Avol midraisa ain't moilin. Everyone agrees that mahatayda, if you're using blood of the carbon, there's no meila whatsoever. Now, in our Mishnah's case, we're talking about after you already sprayed the blood, you fulfilled, you discharge your duty, and we're talking about the remnants of that blood. There's no me'ila. We're going to say there's no me'ila even before you spray the blood. There's no me'ila when it comes to blood. And how do you know? Amar Ula says, Amakra, it says in Pasik, Lachem, Shalachem, Sevanina, Sati Lachem. It says that I gave you I gave you, the blood over there to put on his back to forgive you. So he dashen will dash different words here. He dashen for the word lachem. Lachem means we had more psachim than lachem. Lachem means it's yours. Lachem yehei, totally yours. The way Rab Shimon Tana, the Yeshiva Rab Shimon learned, it says in the same pasuk, I gave it to you ala mizbech lechape, to forgive. Lechape lechapara nasati. The only role the blood has is for kapara, but not if you use it for your own purpose. There's no iser of stealing, and you don't have to bring a sham ilas. You don't have to pay the extra penalty and so on. That's opinion number 2. The word lechap. Rabbi Yechon, from the same pasuk, it says in the pasuk kinefesh habasa bedam hu. It says who? What do you mean who? That this is the same blood. What do you mean? Amakra. Who lifnei kapara, kilach kapara. Just like after you discharge your duties and you sprinkle the blood, there's no longer an issue of stealing, because once you fulfill the mitzvah, there's no longer any need for the base of Mikdash to own it, so there's no longer stealing. So to the blood before you sprinkle it, also there's no me'ila. Ma'ala acha kapara ain't b'mila, just like after the kapara no me'ila. Aflif the kapara ain't b'mila, no me'ila. Says the Gemara, the aim of why did we say la'acha kapara? How do you know which way to learn? Let's be machmer and say faket. Just like before kapara, the blood is still part of the carbon, and maybe there is stealing, because unless you have a raya, otherwise we'll assume the stealing from base of Mikdash till you discharge your duty. So too the blood, the remnants of the blood afterwards should also be mi'ila. Faket. Ma lifnei kapara yesh b'mila, af lachei b'mila. Why don't you say the other way around, that there is mi'ila? Says the Gemara, because we have a general rule, ein lecha davar, we don't have anything, shenas is mitzvah, you discharge his duty, umoilin ba yet is still mi'ila. We don't have such a thing. Says the Gemara, and therefore, so it can't be that after you sprinkle the blood, the leftover blood should still be milah. Obviously, it isn't. And once you know that isn't, and who tells you that the other blood is the same? Says the Gemara of Allah, is that really a fact? That once you fulfill the mitzvah, there's no longer milah, it's no longer kodesh. What about Trumas Hadeshin? Every morning the kohen would go up and scoop a shovel full of ashes and put it on the side of the mizbech. He did that every single morning. And it says in the pasuk, you have to place it there and not use it anymore for yourself. Can't have any benefit from it. So we see that even though it's only ashes, whatever the mitzvah was done, and yet there's still mi'ila. Says the Gemara, you're right. But that's one exception. Ubigdei kahuna, the Kohen Gadol foreclosed after Yom Kippur. It says the pasuk v'nichasham. You should place it there. No longer should it be used, and it's still kodesh. Since you have two psukim that are an exception, so we know from there that everywhere else, once you fulfill your duty, it's no longer holy. Shnei ksuma gechad. These are two psukim giving you an exception, and we have a rule. Once you have two psukim that are telling you the same thing, it's telling you these are the exceptions. Says the Gemara, remember we had an argument previously over in the beginning of the what taka happens to the 8 clothes, what happens to the big day Lavan that the Kohen God leaves behind. One opinion, Chachamim say you put it away, but Abdaisa says a Kohen Hedyot can use it during the year. So that you have to place it there, nobody can use it anymore, it still retains its kedusha. You have to discard it, fine. According to Abdaisa, the Amr says big day kahuna. That big day kahuna ruinain the Kohen Hedyot, that it could be used by a Kohen Hedyot. So it's not holy at all. All you have is Trumas Hadesh, one pasuk that is still holy. It's on the contrary. Who told you that a mitzvah once you fulfilled is no longer Kodesh? What about Trumas Hadesh? Says the Gemara, could we have another exception? Should have a Trumas Hadesh and Egla Arufa. The Egla Arufa as well. Is Shnei Ksuba Boin Kechel. Egla Arufa as well. You're not allowed to use it after you do the Arifa, after you kill the calf. This is for a dead body that was found that we don't know who the murderer is, and you bring this Egla Arufa, and when you chop its head off, and over there also you can't use it anymore afterwards. And Shnei Ksuba Boin Kechel. These are two psukim coming to tell you an exception. The whole Shnei Ksuba Boin Kechel. You have to hide it there. You can't use it anymore. Says the Gemara, and everyone holds, even those who say that two psukim is not an exception. But here you definitely have two psukim here, because even though the big day kuna might not be included, here you do. Says the Gemara, the one who said that two psukim we do learn, 3 you don't, but 2 you do. What are you going to say? And if he happens to hold when it comes to big day kuna that a kohen head can use it, we then only have one exception. We have 2 exceptions, Trumas Hadesh and Egla Rufa, but 2 is not enough. So the Gemara, each one of these exceptions actually is an extra word or a letter that tells us that here is an exception, and everywhere else, once you fulfill the mitzvah, there's no longer any me'ilah, it's no longer holy. Why? Over here it says by the Egla Rufa, it says okay. So it's by the big day kohen, it says some, or by the what do you call it? By the arufa, it says ha arufa. There's an extra hey. This arufa is an exception, and nowhere else they have such a thing. And over there, when we say by the Trumas Hadesh, it says v'sam moy. You should place it, and not what. But everything else, once you fulfill the mitzvah, it's no longer kodesh. Says the Gemara, okay, so hani tlasi yute. So now we have you have 3 psukim now by dam. You have 3 psukim by dam. Lama, why do you need 3 psukim by dam? So what do we need? All these things we had lachem, lechape. We had before. You had 3 words: hu, lachem, and lechape. 3 different words that we used before to tell you there's no meila. Yeah, since lechayda there's no meila once you do anything. So why should lechayda? You need 3 different yutim to say the same thing. Says the Gemara. Chad lemeute menoise. One is to tell you that by blood, if you ate blood, let's say it was nicer. If it happened to be nicer, you'll be chayiv for the iser of eating blood, but you won't be chayiv for the iser of nicer. Or and you don't have to bring a carbon if it was a mistake. And so too, if you ate blood of meila, we just said there's no meila there. You'll be chayiv for eating blood, but you won't be chayiv meila for stealing from the base of Mikdash. Nor will you be, if you happen to be tamei tumas aguf, which normally is kares, and you did by mistake, you're not chayiv at all. You'll be chayiv for blood. And so let's say you did a shagig by the blood, but you definitely was amazing when it comes to tumah or milah. There's no aveda because we have these 3 psukim that tell you 3 different psukim, 3 miyutim, one to be ma'id milah, one to be ma'id noiser, and one to be ma'id tumah. Says but from pigul, if let's say you had the wrong intentions in mind when you did the carbon, that you thought you're going to eat it in the wrong place, and then we saw the wrong time, and then we said that even if you eat in the right time, you did an aveda of eating pigul, but nevertheless, if what you happened to eat was the blood of that carbon of pigul, then you are potter from the iser of pigul. You'll be chayiv for blood. For example, you were shaggy by blood, even though you didn't maize pigul, you're not chayiv kares. Why? Why shouldn't blood be? Because we have a rule. Now we learned Which parts of the animal do the laws of pigul apply? Anything which needs something else to be permitted. For example, the meat of the animal you cannot eat until you shecht it or until you sprinkle the blood. Bein la'adam, the person cannot eat it until you sprinkle the blood. The bein la'mizbeach, the mizbeach cannot get its parts until you sprinkle the blood. It itself is not the matter. It needs something else to enable it. Then chayavin olav pigul. Since it needs the carbon to enable it, so the carbon itself is a pigul carbon, so therefore the meat and everything else becomes a pigul. But the dam atimatu, blood doesn't need anything else to enable it. It itself is the enabler. It's what you're going to use to be sprinkled on the mizbeach. So then it does not have the law of pigul there. And that's why we don't need a special pasuk to be matter that pigul. Okay, that finishes, to be matter the blood from pigul. That finishes today's sugya. We'll continue tomorrow.
Not all this. This Amos Hamayim is very interesting because when you learn all the dimensions and everything of the Beis Hamikdash and where what is placed, then they don't tell you exactly where it's located. And it sounds like the water comes from the north and flows to the south. So where's the source of the water from the north? Because we said for the Kohen Gadol, the source of the water is in the south, from the south of Beis Lechem.
Yeah, good question. I don't know. There must have been underground wells and springs, and it's one of those. But, yeah, interesting. There's no way of drawing where it is. I guess I didn't know.
Because from what it seems like here, it's mamish. It has to mamish flow right next to the Yesod HaDroimi.
Not necessarily has to be right next to it. The blood is would flow down.
Yeah, but well, if blood congeals, it would congeal on the floor. It wouldn't be able to flow down into where.
Yeah, but remember, from time to time they would block up the amma, the water.
They cleaned it up. Yeah.
Maybe that's when they cleaned it up.
Okay.
Everyone have a good day.